We're on a mission. See the biggest blockbusters of the last 50 years exactly how they were meant to be seen, on the big screen. We're in the summer of 84, and there's a problem. Ghostbusters is sold out. So we're going to hang out at the theater and watch everything else instead. Welcome to Sold Out. I'm Ian. I love good movies, bad movies, and everything in between. The only thing a movie can do that will make me not like it is be boring, or sometimes too long. I might be the best person in the world to spend all day at the theater with, second only to my co-host, Michael Smith.
Hi, Ian. Hi, everybody else. I am Michael, the other half of the Sold Out cinematic duo. I used to say that for like 15 years I've been critiquing movies, but I recently was talking to a grammar school friend of mine about this podcast, and she reminded me that I've been opinionated about movies my entire life. And so I'm very happy to have this outlet for doing so now.
Has your opinion softened on movies as you've gotten older?
I think that I peaked in my pretentious assholery in my 20s, and
Okay.
I have softened now.
Yeah, I definitely went through a hardcore movie snob era. I almost feel like I've swung too hard the other way now, and I like everything.
Yeah, because I'm with you, right? Where the worst thing a movie can be is boring, whereas before I wanted it to have something to say, and I don't necessarily have that criteria anymore.
Well, we are on our second weekend where you and I go to the theater and we watch 3 movies in the same day. You pick a movie, I pick a movie. As I said, we're in the summer of 84. We came here to see Ghostbusters, a classic. Who doesn't love Ghostbusters, right?
I hope nobody.
But it was sold out, and so we had to pick a couple of other movies to kill the day while we waited for our seats to Ghostbusters. What did you pick this weekend, Michael?
I picked Joe Dante's Gremlins.
Yeah. What made you choose Gremlins?
I actually chose Gremlins because I think Gremlins and Ghostbusters opening in the same weekend against each other is kind of a fascinating side-by-side. I think there's a lot that they have in common, so much that they have in common that nowadays there's no way the studios would allow those two movies to open against each other.
And split an audience the way they potentially could have.
And they did, right? I mean, Ghostbusters went on to become this box office behemoth. There's a reason it's one of the top 100 of all time. But this weekend was very close. Gremlins came in second by $1 million. And so I chose it for that reason, that they have a lot in common. It was a real fight for the box office. And I thought they'd be fun to watch at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Gremlins up there. I actually briefly thought about choosing since I did get to pick this weekend and got first pick. But I did skip Gremlins. And, I didn't choose.
You didn't.
Yeah. I watched it, but I didn't pick it.
Yes.
That was your pick.
No, you decided that we needed a lot of day to kill while waiting for Ghostbusters. That's what you did.
Not deliberately. I did. The thing about back in 1984, they would say the title of the movie on the marquee and then what time it showed. It didn't show the runtime. You couldn't look that up.
No.
Yeah, and so I really wanted to be true to that feeling, and I chose Once Upon a Time in America, which the title alone suggests that maybe it's a long runtime, has kind of that epic feel to it.
Once Upon a Lot of Time in America. Movie takes place over 40 years and feels like it.
Primarily 35 years. But yes, I chose Once Upon a Time in America. I knew nothing. Nothing about this movie.
I honestly didn't either. I think I was aware that it existed, but, contemporarily, we're familiar with Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was more familiar with Once Upon a Time in the West than I was Once Upon a Time in America.
Yeah.
And so I was curious. When you picked it, I wasn't upset with you for picking it. It's a movie that, we'll get into discussing it itself, but I'm happy to have checked it off the list for sure.
I am too. I wasn't ready for what it was going to be. I looked, when I did a little bit of research, it was I'm aware that this movie exists, but maybe only anecdotally. I was like, is this a classic? Is this a movie that I missed? Is this one of those like tried to be epic and then never quite made it sort of movie? Like you made us watch Giant last year before we started doing the pod. And I was like, is it one of those where it like was high on the AFI and then like slowly fell off as people went back and reassessed it? And it actually has had kind of a reverse.
Yeah, I was going to say the answer to your question is kind of all of the above.
Yeah.
Which I can see why. I mean, it has an interesting sort of production and release history as well that I think contributes to that.
Once Upon a Time in America is all of the above, like both a reassessed classic and sort of a epic that got forgotten to time. But movie directors today seem to really like this movie.
Movie directors really like it. Like I was doing
did a whole restoration on it in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason we get to see it as we do now. If we were really hopping in our DeLorean and going to 1984, we'd have seen a chopped up, super short version, not super short, but in comparison, short version of this. And that really, I think, contributes to the interesting history of this movie. It premiered at, was it the Cannes Film Festival, where it was really, really well received. By time it got released in the United States, it was cut in half and panned.
Yeah, I mean, there was a quote from a critic saying that it was the worst movie of like 1984 and maybe of the 80s.
Yeah, and I did not see that version, so I will take his word for it.
Yeah. I mean, I can see how that would be the case after having watched it, and we'll dive deeply into it. So yeah, we checked those out. Then we got to see Ghostbusters. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to discuss Gremlins. We're going to discuss Once Upon a Time in America. What a great pairing. I don't think any movie sommelier would ever put these two together.
No, that would be very avant-garde.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we'll be back shortly with more Sold Out. Welcome back to Sold Out. Michael and I are going to dive deeply into Gremlins and Once Upon a Time in America. Since I got to choose what weekend we traveled to, I get the honor, the pleasure of going first. So we're going to go into Once Upon a Time in America. This movie, as I said, I chose it. I knew so little about it other than it was streaming and it had Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Hades.
Hades, I know. I am realizing as we're watching more of these like movies, James Woods is really good.
James Woods is so good.
Really good.
I could watch him all day. But yeah, I knew so little about this movie. And I will just say sort of my review of this movie is that it is both superb and unwatchable at the same time. The entire time I was watching this movie, it reminded me very much of watching The Brutalist. I mentioned this to you before we started recording. Brady Corbett must have seen this before conceiving of The Brutalist, and that it is much, much too long. It is in some ways a gorgeous slice of Americana. There's some cinematography in here that is just some of the most beautiful cinematography I've ever seen. The music, the score is phenomenal. Fun fact, due to not filing the paperwork properly, the score was not put up for Academy Award consideration.
Oh, wow, because it's spectacular.
It's spectacular, and it's universally respected as spectacular. But yeah, they just forgot to nominate it, so somebody didn't get the paperwork in time.
That is the most Italian thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. But this movie takes an hour and 15 to an hour and 45 minutes to get started.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably my biggest critique of the movie. Once it starts, there are some moments in the film that are magnetic. They're phenomenal. The acting is amazing. The costumes are incredible. I think that the biggest thing that the movie is missing is like a likable character, and we can
doesn't have
about
any of those.
It's really interesting because we've talked about the save the cat, right? This is, you take your protagonist and you make sure it saves the cat. He saves the cat so that you can like him when he does something evil later. You know, there just isn't a save the cat moment before he rapes not one, but two women in the movie, stabs a police officer, and
turns his friends in to the cops and gets them killed.
Noodles, Noodles played by Robert De Niro. David Aronson is the character's name, but he goes by Noodles for most of the movie. He commits so many heinous acts of evil. But I saw this interview with Tarantino, and he was just talking about, like, this is the worst group of gangsters you'll ever see on film. Like, they are heartless, they're cold, they're vicious, they laugh when they kill. Like, they have no scruples. And it's really hard to connect to the characters, I think, for the bulk of the movie for that reason. Yeah. Even as children, they're quite repugnant.
Yeah, you highlighted, I think, the two things that really made this a difficult movie for me. One is that it is punishingly long, and it does. It takes an hour and 15 minutes to get going. Like, if they needed to cut it down to release it to an American audience that didn't have patience for it, that whole establishing first act really could have been trimmed to almost nothing.
I don't remember anything from it other than the phone ringing, the opium. I feel like the movie started when they revealed that there was a tontine. The suitcase, I was like, oh, this is what the movie's about. This is where it starts. And that from that point forward, I actually did enjoy the movie.
I did too, but by that point, I watched this in multiple sittings. I was like, oh, I gotta go back to this movie, right? I resented the movie for putting me through that first part. And then the other thing is that you have these characters that are scumbags in the beginning. They are scumbags at the end.
And in the middle, they're even worse scumbags.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the arc was that I was watching, right? Because, in a gangster movie, there's this potential for it to be a story about kind of greed and the corrupting power of power and influence, right? And you don't get that because they're kind of greedy and shitty to start with.
So the way I read it, and I agree, it is very hard to attach yourself to a character. Robert De Niro brings so much charisma to every role. Mm-hmm. It's almost discordant in that he's such a evil person, but he's such a warm and charming guy that is difficult. But I was thinking about the title. I was thinking about, to your point, that arc, and I think what Sergio Leone was doing, or at least what I walked away with, was that this is the arc of America, not of these characters. It's that America needs a group of people like this to move power forward. There has to be people like this that operate in the shadows in order for America to have gotten to where it got. So if we're looking at all of this from the perspective of 1968, or when the film is actually released, 1984, and you're saying, well, how did we get where we are? How did these people rise to power? How did unions get to be where they are? How do we address crime and drugs and alcohol in this country the way that we do? It sort of says, well, we needed these people to get here. Now, whether you agree with where we are or where we aren't, but this group of just villains is used by so many different parties.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of this now, so it's a very unformed thought, but I do think that the presence of prohibition and the way that prohibition sort of empowered that evil is an interesting contrast to what you just said, in that you sort of need bad to recognize good and vice versa.
Who are you? Who's paying you?
I think this is really gonna piss you off there, Mac. But I think it's those dirty politician friends of yours.
Yeah. Will you crawl back and tell them we don't want you in with us? Our fight's got nothing to do with liquor and prostitution and dope.
You just better get used to the idea, pal. This country is still growing up. Certain diseases it's better to have when you're still young.
You boys ain't a mild case of the measles. You're the plague. And bastards like him are immune. That's the difference between us and them.
Take it easy. The difference is that they're always going to win. You're going to keep getting it up the ass. Sooner than you think.
I had to leave a little bit of the score on at the end because the score is just so good. There are so many things that are so good in this movie. But I think that in some ways is the thesis statement. I was really looking in this movie for what is the why behind this story? What do you see? What is Leone trying to say about America? Because it is based on a memoir. Disputed whether it's a true memoir or not, but it's based on a memoir, especially memoirs of gangsters. Gangsters love telling their stories in ways that they didn't happen. But Leone changed so much about it to make it very much his story about America. It's more inspired by than necessarily based on, I would even say. And this like this series of dialogue between, De Niro's character, James Woods' character, and then Donnelly, who originally that role was offered to Clint Eastwood and he turned it down, interestingly. Also, just other side note, Joe Pesci really wanted the role that I think James Woods has. I think Max, but he didn't get it. And so then Leone told him he could pick any role he wanted from the rest of the roles, and he picked Frankie. Apparently in the script, Frankie had way more screen time, way more dialogue.
Yeah,
and it all
he
got
probably
cut out.
shot a ton of it.
Oh, yeah, and it all got cut, which is too bad because Joe Pesci's so fucking good, and he's so good in this. He's in it so briefly.
He feels dark in a movie full of darkness, right? And so for him to stand out in that way is really incredible.
His ability to pop in a movie where he has 4 minutes of screen time in a 3 hour and 45-minute movie, and he might be the most memorable character, is pretty incredible. Like, just speaks to his talent as a performer. But going back to this as being the thesis statement, like I think this is what he's saying about America, is that this is a disease that America had to have early in order to grow up into the adult that America is now. Or maybe not adult, young adult. We'll maybe say it is in the 80s,
It's
right?
interesting to watch this in 2025, right? We're coming on the 250th birthday of America, and that's the average age of a republic, in history, right? And we still, I think, do feel like a young country when we look globally. We still have, I think, a teenage angst that maybe you don't see in the rest of the world. And so, as that thesis, like, right, as a statement to that, I think it is interesting and maybe even important.
Yeah. And comparing it to his other films, like he made so many great Westerns, and I see that as maybe the childhood of America, and this is the adolescence. And looking at it in that grand scope, like, I have some love for this movie, even though I felt truly punished by it. I genuinely have some really love and respect, and I think it might be worth watching.
It's funny. We went into this, and I think the impression that I initially gave you was that, like, I hated this movie.
You did give me that impression. You were correct.
And I think I hated watching this movie, right? Like, it wasn't a good time. It felt like a burden. But looking back and reflecting on it, like, there is so much good in here. As you said, like, it's universally not well acted, but like fantastically acted. Every performance is great in a movie with a cast this big, that's this long, with this many scenes. For any individual element to stand out like that is kind of unbelievable.
I don't know if I want to say masterpiece. It feels like it's just shy of masterpiece, though.
Yeah, I could see it being Leone's, like, magnum opus, right?
It's his last film before he died.
Yeah, his life's work coming to fruition, this pinnacle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has some flaws that may be fatal.
It reminded me a lot also, I mentioned Giant. It actually reminded me a lot of when you and I watched Intolerance, where we were like, yes, we understand why this is important in film. We understand why this is an important story to be told. But damn, this is tough to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even just say for a modern audience. I would say for just about any, like, I think in 1984, this would have been a tough watch at its runtime.
Right. Like, I think that the producers that chopped it to bits because they thought it was too long and audiences wouldn't put up with it, they were right.
Well, but there's chopping a movie. There's chopping a movie
wrong
for the audience, and then there's chopping a movie out of fear. And I didn't see the original version, so I'm pure speculation. But it feels like it was chopped out of fear.
Yeah.
And when a movie gets chopped out of fear, you wind up with garbage always. I think when a really smart editor and director sit down and say, okay, we need to get 45 minutes off this movie. How do we do it? There are times where it makes a movie tighter, better, more entertaining. And again, I mean, like I said, you and I already said, like, if you cut the first hour off this movie, I'm golden. Like, I actually probably really love this movie with the first hour chopped off, because I had to get up after the first hour 15. I was like, what am I watching? There were 10 lines of dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, my wife basically opted out of the rest of the movie after that. Yeah.
And that's too bad, because I really do think that there's a reason to watch this film. So, at any rate, that is Once Upon a Time in America, beloved by directors, restored by Scorsese. Great De Niro performance, amazing James Woods performance, Jennifer Connelly's first appearance on film. She's electric as an 11-year-old in this.
Yeah, it's
just incredible.
You said it earlier. I'll steal it now. Like, it's no wonder she went on to have a career after this.
No,
I mean, because anyone who sees her in this must have been banging down the door wanting her in their next project.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, she was cast immediately twice afterwards. So yeah, makes sense. All right. Any other final words on Once Upon a Time in America? I feel like we probably could talk about it forever. There are some scenes in here that are just worth showing up for. Michael, Gremlins. What a pairing.
All right. Yeah. What a pairing. I paired this one.
Great palate cleanser after this one, right?
With Ghostbusters, not with Once Upon a Time in America.
Good palate cleanser for Once Upon a Time in America.
Yeah. Gremlins, basic sort of plot. You have a father who's a failed inventor looking.
But he acts like a door-to-door salesman.
Yeah.
I was actually confused at what his job was.
It's weird. It's really weird. He's looking for a Christmas present for his 20-something son who seems like a teenager in a junk shop in Chinatown and stumbles upon a up until now undiscovered creature called a mogwai, which is a cute little fuzzy Furby-like thing that they named Gizmo, who has a few vulnerabilities that, if not protected, can have disastrous consequences.
And they're very binary vulnerabilities that are kind of impossible to manage and left me with so many questions.
Yeah. So I mean, the rules are don't give it water, don't put it in direct sunlight, and don't feed it after midnight.
It was interesting to see the people involved in making this movie too.
Yeah. So it's a Spielberg production written by Chris Columbus, who had his career very closely tied to John Hughes, directed by Joe Dante, who the movie up until this point that I was most familiar with was Piranha. So that's actually what I kind of really liked about it.
So you liked it?
I did. I liked it, and I liked it for the reasons I imagine a lot of people, including you, have problems with it, is that it's tonally really, really fucking bizarre because it's totally a kid's movie.
It's totally inconsistent. It's not even that it's bizarre.
It's a horror movie. It's a comedy. It's all over the place. I don't know who this is for except me.
Yeah, it's so obviously I went to bat for Life Force in our last episode, and so weird, tonally strange movies I'm all here for. And I didn't hate Gremlins, but I did fall asleep. I actually had to come back to it the next day. Yeah, I was just I was not into it because I don't know. It's just, to your point, tonally, it's not that it was tonally weird. It's that it was so inconsistent. It felt like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be from one scene to the next.
Yeah, because it paints with these really broad, immature strokes. It feels like a cartoon.
You mean one of the
ways.
Gremlins takes a trench coat and flashes someone, which, by the way, they don't have genitals. They reproduce through water. So I don't even know why it would flash, for starters. Why it would
be antisocial.
Why it would understand the cultural context for flashing.
There are a lot of these.
Where it found a trench coat inside.
There are a lot of weird pop culture-y references that the Gremlins make that for creatures that have existed for minutes would not have had the exposure to understand. It makes no sense.
No, and I don't want to pick apart the making sense, but you mentioned the cultural references. I actually was surprised at their technical expertise. They're cutting telephone lines and fucking with the traffic lights. Why do they know what traffic lights are? Why do they know what doing something to traffic lights would do anything to anybody?
They are mysterious creatures.
So getting away from the picking apart, that not making sense, for me it was just, the movie felt like every single scene was, what's something silly and crazy we can do and have it have no connection to the prior silly and crazy thing that happened.
Yes.
Gremlins are silly and crazy with no boundaries. And this is generally where movies lose me, is when I'm when there's no rules in the world. They've set up these three really important rules, and those seem to be the only rules in this entire world. Every other rule around logic and...
They all get broken early on, right?
Almost immediately.
Their, water gets
except for the
accidentally
third one that
spilled.
nobody can seem to figure out. They're
Yeah.
so stupid. They've broken 2 of the 3 rules. They can't figure out what to do for the
They
third.
accidentally spill water. You end up with a whole bunch of gremlins. They feed them after midnight. They turn evil. We are told, will be killed by direct sunlight, and nobody just hits them with a UV light. I don't...
And you know what, actually? This brings up another important scene that really jumped out at me. So when they accidentally spill water on Gizmo and the little fur balls pop off of his back, that cute little Gizmo is in agony. Mm-hmm. It's writhing on the table. And what's the main character's name? I barely remember this movie.
Oh, gosh. That's not important.
No.
Billy
and his little friend played by, really young...
Phoebe Cates.
No.
Phoebe
Corey
Cates,
Feldman. Corey Feldman. They start looking at the little fur balls while Gizmo is literally writhing in pain. Like, it's animal torture.
Yeah.
And then he brings them to a middle school scientist, which, again, his character's like 21 plus. I don't know why he's still hanging out with this middle school science teacher.
Well, why he's friends with this, 12-year-old Corey Feldman.
None of it makes any sense. But then they do it again. It's just animal torture porn. It's weird.
It's weird.
Even the camera's not that interested in the fact that Gizmo's in as much pain as he is.
Yeah, and I think this is a movie that kind of like Once Upon a Time in America has a bunch of these pieces that I really like. There are scenes that are just crazy. There's a scene where the gremlins turn into gremlins. They change from the cuddly little Gizmo creatures into the evil gremlins. And Billy's mom encounters them in her kitchen, and it takes care of business in some
that scene is
insane
wild.
ways.
Well, she is the villain. I am convinced she is the villain of the film.
More so than Banker Lady?
100%. Banker Lady is just trying to watch her bottom line. She at least has a motivation for what she's doing. Mom has no motivation.
Yeah, no, Mom just finds these gremlins
killing.
and is like, I'm going to, one of them's crawling in my blender, so I'm going to turn it on. She just violently stabs one to death and seems to really enjoy it. She shoves one in a microwave and makes it explode.
Sprays it in the face with tick and flea poison before she shoves it in the microwave and makes it explode, which is a gruesome scene.
Yeah, they are really fun set pieces, but if you zoom out and think about it for a second, it is really sick.
It was weird because watching Once Upon a Time in America, there were some bloody, difficult scenes to watch, and yet somehow Gremlins was more gruesome and disturbing.
Yeah, there's the when the Gremlins murder the aforementioned evil bank lady by causing...
Does she die? Is she dead?
I don't know.
They're never really clear on whether they killed. The middle school scientist, too. He's face down with a needle in his butt.
Yeah.
But is that fatal? I don't know. Why would it be?
She's on her little stair chair elevator thing. It gets launched out of her upstairs window.
Wires the chair to go faster.
And it's hilarious.
Is it?
I thought so.
I was just confused. Why is that the way to kill somebody?
And then you have this dad who's the inventor. This is where the total inconsistencies don't make any sense, where he is this inventor and none of his inventions work. And so everyone is living in this house on edge about whether or not they're going to be attacked either by a gremlin or the metaphorical gremlins of the invention.
Yeah, what's more dangerous? The gremlin that rewires your elevator chair, which have you ever been on one of those before?
No, they seem fun.
They are so fun. My grandparents had one in their house. They had a big, beautiful house, a big, beautiful staircase, and there was a little elevator chair that went up and down it. But yeah, I don't know. The movie is just it just felt like somebody took 3 jigsaw puzzles and dumped them on the table.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend it against any of this stuff. It just
trying to make a
me.
picture out of it. And here's the thing: I think some of it is really fun. You're absolutely right, but it's just it just felt like as a movie, it just wasn't a movie.
Yeah, and that brings me to kind of. Is there any way to kind of close this out, wrap it up? I'm going to ask the Die Hard question, which is Gremlins a Christmas movie?
It came out in the summer, and all of it takes place over Christmas.
It takes place over Christmas, and I would argue that not only does it take place in Christmas, but it really is about Christmas, because if there is a point to the movie, I think the movie is about sort of the dangers of this over-consumerism.
If I
I warned you. With Mogwai comes much responsibility. But you didn't listen, and you see what happens.
But I didn't mean it.
You do with Mogwai what your society has done with all of nature's gifts. You do not understand. You are not ready.
And in case you're wondering, was this a Spielberg movie produced in the 1980s? Just look to the Asian character used as a prop.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think it is a Christmas movie because it starts as this Christmas gift that is seen as just this. He's warned that, the Mogwai's not for sale, that, in the wrong hands, horrible things can happen. And it's just treated like a cute commodity. And then all of this chaos happens by not taking it seriously. And so I do think that there is something to say about taking this holiday, making it all about, the cheapness of kind of receiving gifts, not treating that well, and
not reading the instructions.
Not reading the instructions. It didn't come with the batteries. And whether or not, it has something to say about society's sort of just quick, cheap, shallow consumption of things and not respecting the things that we have and that are around us.
Do you know why it came out in the summer then? Because I actually think that's a decent enough reading of the movie, and I'm willing to accept that as like the why that this movie exists.
Yeah, and which makes the release in the summer super bizarre. Like this movie should have come out in November.
Yeah.
It's we talked
before Thanksgiving weekend release type of movie.
I'm pretty sure I've seen this movie before, though this viewing might as well have been the first, given how little I remembered about it. It's one of those movies that I think ends up on TV around Christmas time every year.
Probably.
And so, the release schedule on this is really weird. And then putting it up against Ghostbusters, which has a lot in common in that it's sort of this like comedy, horror, genre bending movie. It's a weird release. I think Warner Brothers made a boo-boo in putting it out in the summertime. And I'll close with this. I love how much time we've spent in the 80s because
I chose the 80s again very specifically. I love the
80s movies are so fun. The fact that these gremlins are puppets and they're really expressive. I think especially while they're like little mogwai, their facial expressions and movements and things, that sort of homemade feel that you just don't get in movies now. I always have a really good time when we visit these movies.
Both movies we chose were big swings that are bizarre and took a lot of risk with what the audience is willing to tolerate. Played with genre, did a lot of interesting things, and it is an era of filmmaking that I don't think gets talked about as much as the 90s does these days, but I actually think it's a really, really important era that sometimes gets a little passed over. So I love me some good mid-80s weirdness. All right. Well, that seems like a good place to stop. We are going to take a break, and then when we come back, we will see the headliner and talk about Ghostbusters. We'll be back with more Sold Out.
Welcome back to Sold Out. I am Michael. I am here with Ian. We just talked about two movies from the summer of 1984, Once Upon a Time in America and Gremlins. A really interesting double feature. And now we are going to dive into the movie that won the weekend, went on to be a massive hit, is on the top 100 of all time, is, I think, omnipresent in our culture. Everyone is familiar with the Ghostbusters.
I was really shocked to not find it in my 1,000 movies you got to see from the New York Times. Like, honestly, I thought Once Upon a Time in America might be in there because I wanted to read up on the reviews from the time. Wasn't in there. And then, good job, Ian, knocking cups over. Didn't spill anything.
That's good.
And then Ghostbusters was shockingly not in there, too. Ghostbusters, undisputed classic, right?
Yeah, and it, in the little bit of research I did, kind of really invented a type of movie that we're very familiar with. At the time, it had a $30 million budget, some like groundbreaking special effects in what's ultimately a comedy.
With a bunch of SNL people.
And we take that for granted now. We have a lot of these like action comedies, horror comedies, whatever you want to call them, where they're comedies, but they have the budget and production of a much larger movie. That was not the case in 1984.
No, everything before this movie were low budget, not well shot, no production design. Was just put a funny person on camera and they'll do funny things. Like,
yeah. And I mean, even Gremlins, which played with genre, I mean, that was made for $11 million, not 30.
Yeah, but it also didn't have the cast.
It did not have the cast.
Yeah, I'm sure that they pulled the 30 together at least with the fact that Bill Murray was becoming a pretty big star at this point, and so they were taking the risk.
Yeah,
but it was a risk,
and it made Dan Aykroyd a star. It's a Harold Ramis, written movie. A lot of these people that I think we're very familiar with now and really appreciate now. This was early, and so yeah, for Ghostbusters not to be in your book, I think is really bizarre.
Ramis was a genius.
Mm-hmm.
He was an absolute comedy genius. I think that we have a lot to be grateful to because of him. Comedy is going through such a difficult time now where it just doesn't get theatrical releases. We've gotten 2 comedies this summer, like really one in the summer and then one sort of post-summer. We got Naked Gun, which if you haven't seen it, oh my God, go see The Naked Gun. It is so good. And now Spinal Tap 2, which I have not seen yet, but I haven't heard great things. I love Spinal Tap so much. But this is an era in which comedy was like very much on the rise. And this feels like, I don't know, like the pinnacle of like what comedy could do theatrically, but also in kind of bleeding into other genres.
Yeah, I think you're really onto something. Comedy now is something that the best comedies on TV, the movies that are made for comedy very much either don't get theatrical at all or really aren't. They're given a theatrical release, but that's not the point. The point is that most people are going to watch them at home because comedy feels like something you don't need to see on a big screen, even though I argue that the sort of communal experience of a really solid comedy can't be beat. It's like horror in that way.
Yeah. Seeing Borat in theaters was one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
And Ghostbusters is this hilarious comedy. Like, it really is genuinely a funny movie.
But it's also genuinely a scary movie.
It feels like an event, right? It feels like a theatrical event. It is a movie that really benefits from that experience in a way that I don't know if we just like have lost all appreciation for, take for granted or what, but we just don't view comedies in that way anymore.
I don't know. Even as we're talking about this, I'm like, we're saying, well, comedy's reached this pinnacle at this moment, right? But Ghostbusters isn't a straight down the middle comedy the way maybe The Jerk is or Caddyshack or, similar movies of this era. And I wonder if maybe we are still living in the era of Ghostbusters, because if you think about it, like Ghostbusters, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how you make $1 billion with a comedy, is that you cloak it in a sci-fi, you cloak it in a fantasy, you cloak it in something else, and then you make a really funny movie that also does that genre well, because Ghostbusters is killing it on the front of being kind of a horror. I mean, the movies, I love the opening sequence. It's funny, no matter how many times, we talked about this in our last episode, no matter how many times I watch Back to the Future, I'm always like, I get all the beats. No matter how many times I watch Ghostbusters, I don't remember the beats because they're so good and unexpected. Every scene feels so unique, so well thought out. The fact that it opens in that wonderful library scene without your stars, in a genuinely scary scene. You're in dark corridors. What's scarier than an old New York public library, which the interior was actually shot in LA, but whatever, doesn't matter. Matters to me, not to anybody else. They make the movie, they give you this tone that it is genuinely frightening.
It is a fully gothic setting and experience as it opens. And I think that that's what makes the movie work so well. I think maybe it's why it is so enduring, is that, we talk about it as a comedy. If someone references Ghostbusters, I think of it as a comedy, but it works exactly the way a horror movie should work. And even if it wasn't funny, I think there's a good movie there.
That's the thing, is they made a good movie that happened to also be funny with some really great funny people in it. And there are so many standout roles. I mean, I think this is Harold Ramis's best role, honestly. I never really loved him as a performer. You ever seen Stripes?
I have, but I couldn't tell you anything about it.
It's a tough watch. My dad was a big Bill Murray guy. Like Like to the point where, are you familiar with Razor's Edge?
Mm-mm.
He made a drama in the 80s based on a Hemingway novel, and I've seen it because we had it on Laserdisc.
Bill Murray is great for all of the reasons Bill Murray is always great. But I think, Venkman is not who you remember. You remember Spengler. I remember.
Egon.
Yeah, Egon is just so good. It's the reason that, when Ivan Reitman, the director of this movie's son, sort of rebooted the franchise with Afterlife, it really is this like love letter to Egon Spengler and Harold Ramis and what he created with this movie.
I cried my eyes out of that part of the movie.
Yeah.
Afterlife. That killed me. It just
Afterlife is good.
Harold Ramis is superb in this movie. I think he has my favorite line in the entire movie. I'm gonna not quite get it right, but it's I'm scared beyond the capacity of rational thought. The fact that he can like put together such a coherent sentence
that it's so rationally thought out
to describe his fear is like, it's such a perfect encapsulation of his character. I also love that he's the only one that is questionable whether he has a doctorate, but he's clearly also the only one who has a brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And
like Venkman, that guy should not have a PhD. That is not okay. Venkman is a sex criminal.
Yeah. Well, there's our tie back to Once Upon a Time in America.
Honestly, there's not that much difference between him and Noodles. Just that PhD, I think. Their upbringing.
But I think that's also what's really fun about this movie is it's sort of, you have these people who are academics, right? They're professors, but it's a very, like, it's an ode to like scrappy blue collar, again, like tying it back to America. It's very American in that way.
The most blue collar professors you'll ever meet.
Yeah. In that, the real villain is, government bureaucracy.
Jesus Christ. The fact that the EPA is the villain in this movie is probably my only gripe.
But it's funny. And
it's funny, but
it brings the characters to life.
It's so irresponsible to cast the EPA as the villain of a ghost movie.
Yeah, because again, like you and your, really annoying take that the mayor in Jaws was correct to close down.
You'll never give this up. You're never going to give this up.
To close down the beaches. It's like, yeah, of course, like the government's going to see this small private entity operating out of a retired firehouse using nuclear-powered equipment as a potential problem is a reasonable concern. But I don't care. They're busting ghosts, and it's just so much fun.
I mean, but the ghosts are just annoying, not unlike the Gremlins. Like, the ghosts aren't doing anything terrible or fatal. Like, the possible outcome of that nuclear reactor exploding seems far more risky than a ghost floating around in your house breaking dishes.
Yeah. And
this is the gremlin problem. Do you stab the gremlin with a knife because it broke your plates?
Yeah.
The answer in the 80s is a resounding yes.
And that's another thing that just brings me back to, I love spending time in the 80s because, yeah, that element of it feels very 80s. It's
movie throw morality out the window. If there's something scary and different, you get rid of it.
Yeah. And then it just, it creates iconic imagery, right? Like who in America, like, isn't familiar with the Stay Puft Marshmallow, like, monster?
And the joke at the end, I mean, the fact that Venkman gets slimed time and time and time again in a movie where they set up this theme, that has to be like the longest joke with a payoff I've ever seen in a movie, where like you see him get slimed, he gets it on himself initially in the library, he gets slimed really bad in the hotel. When Venkman doesn't get covered and Stay Puft at the end, like, only a great comic mind could write a script in which you have a joke that just took 75 minutes to get to the punchline, and it's a great punchline.
It's hilarious. That's what I mean. This movie,
it's amazing.
Stands alone as a great comedy, stands alone as a great horror movie, creates iconic characters and images. Slimer, who, again, if you haven't seen the movie,
I see flavor,
right? But if you haven't seen the movie, you think Slimer is like the iconic, like, character villain, big ghost. He's kind of a side character here.
Barely
in it. And I think that
Joe Pesci in it.
Yeah. But I think that does speak to the staying power of this movie. The reason I appreciate that it is on the top 100, right? I was surprised. Like I knew it was big, surprised it was that big.
Yeah, I was saying.
And kind of love that that's true.
This movie does not set itself up for a sequel. It leaves you wanting a sequel.
You begging for it.
Begging for it. You're like, I hope that I get to see them all again because they're so wonderful. I have to also do another quick pit stop. I mentioned this before we were recording. Annie Potts as the secretary, she is so good in the movie. The only thing she does wrong is be too pretty for that role.
Yeah.
I don't know the story behind it, but I have to imagine that the casting director, when she sat down to read for it, was like, shit. Clearly, we have to give it to you. Yeah. How do we make you look mousier and not lovely?
How are we going to have the opportunity to put you in our movie and not put you in our movie, but we don't have anywhere to put you in the movie?
Well, but in that role specifically, she's so funny. Her, Ramis, and Moranis for me, and you wouldn't think with a movie with, Bill Murray at the top of it, right? But those three are just killing me. I got to ask, though, because we'll never get to it on this, as far as I know. Ghostbusters 2, where do you stand on that one?
So Ghostbusters 2, I don't revisit.
I fucking love Ghostbusters 2. I might like it more.
Really?
It's so weird. It's it's so bizarre.
I remember liking it.
Oh, I got to ask you to rewatch it. It is off the wall,
and I have no reason not to rewatch it. I mean,
the pink
I own
slime
it.
that responds to emotion that allows them to ride the Statue of Liberty into the city. The whole thing is just like, they were just like, we ripped up the rule book for Ghostbusters 1 to make this amazing movie. This time they just threw it out the window.
Well, and they have so much goodwill, I think, from the first movie that they could do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, but people hate it. People do not love Ghostbusters 2, but I am such a huge fan of it. I love it. It starts with the fact that they have been, talking about not setting up for a sequel, that they've been bankrupted because they got sued for what happened on the top of the building at the end of 1, and they're playing at kids' birthday parties.
Which is great. I love it.
Theme music.
Yeah.
Which means their theme music exists in the Ghostbusters world.
Yeah, they probably use it to advertise their ghost busting enterprise.
The theme music of the film exists in the world of the Ghostbusters. It's great. It really is. And it's funny because it's the one that killed the franchise.
Yeah, so I think we are in total agreement that, when we look at the summer of 1984, we look at these three movies specifically. Like Ghostbusters absolutely is the one that deserves to be in.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. It is such a unique, I will say, masterpiece. I do think Ghostbusters is a masterpiece, not a lesser masterpiece.
No, it is as good as a movie can be doing what it's trying to do, and the fact that it was groundbreaking in that task just sort of adds to it.
Yeah, I think it's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah,
I really think so.
I totally agree with you.
So MVP of the weekend then?
MVP of the weekend is Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis, okay.
Yeah, because one, he co-wrote the movie, right? He
did.
Is I choose to believe responsible for some of those like really interesting beats that the movie has, those jokes that take 75 minutes to pay off. It's just something that feels very Ramisonian, if you will.
Comedy. I mean, his comedy mind is unrivaled.
And then to stand out in that ensemble cast, I think also he's pulling double duty and excels at both.
I think that is very, very fair to say. I'm going to go Reitman.
Okay.
And for the fact that he pulled all of this together into a genre-bending film that on paper at the time shouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of reasons why this movie should have been an absolute train wreck with this huge cast, with a genre that for all intents and purposes either didn't exist or previous attempts at it, attempts at like sort of the horror comedy genre adventure just fell flat. Nobody was really having it.
Yeah, or they lean very heavily into one or the other, right? Where it's one thing first and the other thing second, whereas this one feels like it is equally balanced.
Yeah, and I think only a great director can do that. But I have to just give honorable mention to Ennio Morricone for the score of Once Upon a Time in America. That score is just gorgeous and lush.
It's gorgeous, and there are elements of that score that I was familiar with, that like watching the movie,
isn't that wild?
You hear it, you're like, oh, I've heard this before. I didn't realize that this is where it came from. And so for a movie for a score coming from a movie with the history and sort of mixed reception and consumption that this movie has, to be an iconic score, I think you're right.
Yeah. So I think we both agree that America picked right this weekend. Michael and Ian did not do better than America.
We did not.
But between Michael and Ian, who do you think? What did you enjoy, Gremlins or Once Upon a Time in America more?
I enjoyed Gremlins more.
Right.
I think that, this is a podcast that really rewards big swings. We reward being ambitious. And so I give Once Upon a Time in America a lot of credit for that. I think
It did all of those things.
I love auteurs. I love when artists are able to create their art without constraint. Lots of things that I, want to love about Once Upon a Time in America. It just was not a good time.
Yeah, I get it. I'm going to lean Once Upon a Time in America for myself because as much as I resented the movie for the first hour and all of that phone ringing, 24 rings.
So many fucking rings.
And I know it's like, it's designed to give you anxiety and want someone to pick up the phone. And the fact that somebody does pick up the phone and it doesn't stop the ringing is so infuriating. Talk about a nightmare.
That was the first time where I got mad at the movie.
I think the movie does a lot of things to lose my goodwill, but it did so much to gain it back as the film went on. I do think it is a film worth seeing. I think if you like film and you care about film, there is a lot to be appreciated within it. And I think that it is good for film literacy because as you watch movies later, you actually will see there are a lot of filmmakers have used this film as inspiration for projects.
Yeah.
Like I said, as recently as I would say The Brutalist. It was a great weekend. That means that we're throwing it to the audience again. Once again, Michael and Ian are split. Look at this. We thought we were so agreeable. All we have to do is put two movies next to each other and we're not as agreeable anymore.
Not as agreeable. But yes, we do. We definitely want to hear from you. So thank you for joining us on Sold Out. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Threads at @soldout_pod, where we will have our poll where you can say who picked the better movie. Is it me with Gremlins? Is it Ian with Once Upon a Time in America? The results of that poll will determine who gets to pick our movies for the next episode. I am Michael Smith. You can find me on the internet at Michael_upleft. Ian, where can they find you?
Ian_upleft, also on the internet.
All right.
Yeah, you just log on to the internet by turning on the internet on your phone.
You just hit the internet button, search Michael and/or Ian_upleft. But more importantly, soldout_pod. Let us know what you think, and we will see you next time.
See you next time on Sold Out. Sold Out is an Upleft Media production, hosted and written by Ian Tarter and Michael Smith. Edited, sound engineered, and produced by Ian Tarter, with special thanks to Rosie Page.